Okay, before we continue with the bit introductory glossary, I just want to mention this is spiritual wisdom, and it doesn't necessarily, if you're watching at this, listening to this, it doesn't, and you don't, or it appeared in For You page or something similar, and you don't know where this is headed, it doesn't require you to abruptly convert to any religion. Spiritual wisdom is its purpose is to develop yourself, help you develop yourself as a human, as a brother, as a father, as a son, or as a daughter, as a servant, as a, whatever the path that enlightenment has written for you. It doesn't require you to be part of any religion. It's there for you to serve a purpose. Whether you celebrate the religious rituals, it's so personal. Nobody can claim to be here because you will benefit so much from this. You will benefit so much from listening to these words. And by the way, it's not words. If this is your first time in this channel, this is not words that I elaborated, that I constructed, that I invented myself. This is part of the spiritual wisdom. There is a holy text, part of a religion. Of course, there is such a current of thought, but again, you don't need to be part of any religion at all to be able to obtain inspiration from it. So let's continue. Harjan, a god's devotee, used for both the Guru and the Sikh. Harka Nam is the name of God, or the name. Harkata, a study related to God, singing God's praises, an exposition of Sikh theology. Har Nam is the name of God, the divine name. Harka Chakar, the servant of God, used for both the Guru and the Sikh. Harka Des, the divine country, God's abode as the real home for human beings as opposed to their false homes on the earth. Harke Log, the people of God, the devotees of God, the Sikhs. Halemi Raje, rule of moderation in which there is no oppression or coercion. An expression is an expression used by Guru Arjan for the entire dispensation of Guru Nanak and his successors. Haram. Haram is a forbidden place, the female quarters in a house or a palace. Hathe, something pursued with consistency, amounting to obstinacy, used for a form of yoga in which hard austerities, celibacy, and total renunciation were practiced by the followers of Goraknath. Home, a kind of self-centeredness. When there are between teachers of physics and mathematics, there is a saying that Stephen Hawking was extremely self-centered, strictly right, never making a mistake, and hardly ever wrong. That was Stephen Hawking, his personality, his character. And that's kind of the definition here for self-centeredness, in which everything is attributed to oneself to the exclusion of God's power and his hukam. Hom is a sacrificial act, the ceremony of chanting Vedic hymns around a fire kept burning with oblations of wood, ghee, incense, and other such materials, regarded as a way of pleasing gods or God through the god of fire. Hukam is an order or a divine order, The principle that the power of God remains operative all the time in the physical and moral world. Hukmnama is a written order, generally used for a letter of the person exercising moral and spiritual authority, like the guru, relating mostly to mundane matters. Ik can be one, can be also, for example, to explain that the figure one, the polygon that represents the number one, the figure one, used for emphasis on the oneness of God as one onkar or ik onkar. Indrapuri, the city of Indra. Jagat Jalanda, the world on fire due to Maya, Mamta and Home and the misery of transmigration. Jagati, a tax collector on behalf of the state, used also for the messenger of Jam or personified death called Jamdut. Jag or Jagja, the ceremony of sacrifice to the fire amidst chanting of Vedic hymns to please gods or God through the god of fire, Agni. Judgment is the patron in a client-patron relationship, is the patron, the person who makes payment for services rendered manually or by performing a ritual like the marriage ceremony performed by a Brahman. Janu or Janju, the sacred thread worn by higher caste men after the formal ritual performed by a Brahman. Jangam, a category of the ascetical followers of Shiva and Gaudi, conspicuous for their garb. Jap, recitation used in connection with Nam or a sacred scripture. Jat or Jati is an endogamous group constituted by a number of septs following generally the same occupation and placed in one of the four varnas as a mark of its social position in relation to others, popularly called caste in English. Jatbaran is an endogamous group placed in hierarchical order in relation to other such groups. Jivatmare, one who dies while still alive. Jivatmare Mare Punjive, one who dies while alive and lives again. There is a new kind of life after Home is eradicated. Jivatya Mar Rahye, remain dead in life by eradicating Home. Jivat Marnam, to be dead in life. Jivan Mukta, liberated in life. And Jivan Mukti, liberation in life. Jidduade Ubritet Lehu Ubar, whatever the way, may God redeem the world. Jidduade Ubritet Lehu Ubar, whatever the way, may God redeem the world. Jizya, a tax paid by non-Muslims as the people of the book in accordance with the Islamic law, the Shariat. Joban, youth, as an obstacle on the path of liberation for both men and women. Yogi, in the sense of yoga, is one who pursues yoga, especially the follower of Goraknath. Jot, light, the divine light that is in everyone. Kadar, from Kadir, all-powerful God. Kali Yuga, the fourth of the cosmic ages, traditionally regarded as the age of degeneration, but in Sikh thought, redeemed by Guru Nanak's dispensation. Kalma, a word saying discourse, the confession of faith in Islam. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is God's messenger. somewhere near La Ilah, Il Ilah Muhammad ar Rasul Lilah. Kam, desire, more like a sexual desire, sexual indulgence. Karaj, also kaj, work, task, performance of marriage. Karam, an action or deed that becomes relevant for transmigration or release from the cycle. It's also kindness, mercy, or grace in Persian. Karam Dharam, the duties prescribed for members of the four Varnas in specific situations. Karam Kand, performance of appropriate ritual on specific occasions. Karamakand, the state in which one is strengthened in one's resolve to act for the general welfare through divine grace. Karni, the actual conduct in opposition to mere profession, Katani. Karta, the doer, the only doer, God. Kartar, the sole doer, God. Kasumbe, the plant with bright flowers which serve as a fading dye. Kateb, the books, the scriptures of Semitic faiths. Kak, it's earth, dust. Kan, a little given to a member of the ruling class in medieval India, especially in under the Sultanate of Delhi. Kand, one of the 9 regions of the earth. Khatri, the member of an endogamous group consisting of a large number of Gotras in the Punjab, generally believed to be descendants of the old Kshatriyas who had taken to trade, shopkeeping, soldiering, and administration in later times. Khati, profit, is profit in trade. Khed, game, sport, pastime, used for Guru Gobind Singh's interest in ancient literature to inspire people for a righteous war. Dharmjud, Kinta, the cloak of the Goragnati, the yogi which distinguished him from other ascetics. Kirpa, kindness, grace. Kirsani, cultivation of land, farming. Kirtam Nam, the names of God related to his attributes as the creator, preserver, and destroyer of the universe. Kirtan, singing of the praises of God, singing of Gurbani in a congregation of Sikhs. Kirja, performance of rites prescribed for a particular occasion. Krodh, anger, as one of the 5 adversaries of human beings. Kuchaji, a woman who has no merit or manners. Again, this is a little bit subjective in what for you has to be established in your entire history, what merit means or manners means. So it's not a definition, it's just a source of inspiration. And I think I said, I think I'm not perfectly still right now because I said at the beginning servant when I was mentioning women, and men are also servant in a different direction, probably in the direction of virtues through knowledge, probably in the direction of youth towards the sun, etc., etc. So it is a little subjective what servant means. It is a little subjective here what woman who has no merit or manners is more a description than a definition of, because we live in the 21st century in which certain sentences might be considered closed-minded, but it is quite the opposite. It's pretty open-minded. And if you feel that there is a better way to express it, please show it in the comments of this video. Kul, a family extending over several generations, lineage. Lagan, the auspicious time for betrothal. Laha, profit from trade. Lal, red, the first color of Majid. Langar, community kitchen, the open kitchen in a Sikh Dharamsal. Lavan, the 4 Shabbats of Guru Ramdas meant to be recited at each of the 4 rounds in a marriage ceremony. Lob, greed, avarice. Lok, a world. Mahurat, auspicious time, especially for marriage. Mahser, an affidavit by a number of people testifying to the veracity of a statement for legal purposes. Majid, the dye prepared from Majid, madder, for fast red color. Mal, riches, wealth, material possessions. Malik, title given to a member of the aristocracy. Mamta, the feeling of a mother for the child, attachment with kith and kin. Manda, bad, inferior. But again, this seems a strict rigid. But when it comes to your descriptions, when you say something is inferior, something is superior, you can say humans are inferior. Doesn't matter if they are German or not. Doesn't matter if Nazism ever stroked the world because they thought and said in their discourse that we all are inferior. You could say it that inferior and superior, humans are inferior because robots are superior, or humans are inferior because apples are superior. It depends on the definition. Again, we don't state definitions. We are more to make a description of a situation, a description of an instance of something else, because these words might seem a little too overloaded, but it is not. It's just because the correct translation to English very often is so difficult that it might seem rigid. Manmuk is a self-centered one who thinks of his own inclinations as opposed to the Gurmukh who follows the Guru's instruction and cares for others as well. Mantar, the name in Gurbani. Mantra, a verse, a sacred verse, an initiatory formula, a magical formula. Mantri, also mandri, with T and with D. One who recites mantras or magical words. Marjivya, one who has eradicated home and died to self to live a regenerated life. Marmarejive, one who dies to self to live a regenerated life. Marhi, the spot where a corpse has been cremated, sometimes with a small structure raised over it for lighting a lamp. Marifat, knowledge, divine knowledge, the highest state of spiritual progress in Sufi theosophy. Masan, a corpse, the place where corpses are cremated, a sepulchre raised over a spot of cremation. Mati, earth, dust. Maula, master, God. Mandari, one who observes silence as part of austerities. Maya. Today is very interesting, the definition of Maya, and I am doing a glossary, and I was supposed to do a very interesting translation of it. But the truth is, the one that I like the most is confusion. Confusion in perspectives, the way you see the world. That is like, that's a problem. One word translated into multiple sentences makes sense, right? But Maya can be the following way. All creation that surrounds all earthly things, I very often ask myself, do you invented the ocean? Do you manufacture the forests, all the trees of the planet? No. Okay. You are part of it. It makes sense to say that somebody manufactured the oceans. Somebody outside of the room manufactured the trees and the forest of the world, and animals were manufactured by certain wisdom, and it surrounds us, and we are part of it, and we are proof of it. We are evidence of the creation. We are part of this perfection. Just we don't evolve our brains 100% because we haven't found the method. But if it's scientifically proven that if we were to evolve our brains 100%, we will be proof and evidence of the perfection of creation. So far, so good. We are on the road to it. But Maya is, like all creation and all earthly things, seen as the source of entanglement in the cycle of death and rebirth, subject to destruction in contrast with the Creator. Mehta, the headman of a village or a part thereof. Miharvan, merciful, the merciful God. Milan, mating union with God. Mihr, kindness, mercy, grace. Mir, temporal leader, the head of a clan, the head of a state. Malech, unclean, untouchable, used also for a person who did not belong to the Brahmanical Varna order, an outsider. Moh, affection, love, attachment here in the name of love, attachment here in the name of affection to kith and kin. Mokduvara, the door of liberation. Mani, an ascetic who observes silence. Nanak Muatini na Aki Je Guru Ki Shabad Samai. Do not call them dead who are absorbed in the Guru's Shabad and died to the self. Mukt, liberated. Mukta, the liberated one. Mukti, liberation. Muktipant, the path that leads to liberation, used for the dispensation of Guru Nanak and his successors. Mullah, an Orthodox Muslim generally in charge of a mosque. Mundavani, a riddle, a popular form of composition in the Punjab. Mukadam, the headman of a village or a part thereof. Murati, form, picture. Nad, a horn, a musical instrument, also used for music, nad. Nadved, the horn and the Vedic knowledge, symbolic of the ascetical and the Brahmanical tradition in India. Nadar, from Nasr in Persian, sight, a kind glance, grace. Grace in the sense of illumination, not like algorithm, yeah, no, like very serious grace, like a very important sort of thing that comes inward and goes inward in a cycle through the sun. Like I always like to explain the word grace when it is in this context of some self seriousness, lovely development, discipline toward yourself inward, using the sun. You look at the sun and it throws at you ideas, and it throws at you inspiration, and it throws at you motivation, and it throws at you creativity, and it throws all those things through rays that move at the speed of light, and you say, Vaheguru. Thank you, Vaheguru. That's grace there. Not like, oh yeah, I'm funny. How this problem translating always the word grace. That's when I say that translated to English can be really painful. Nadar is one of the most important attributes of God. Naib, deputy, the provincial governor as a deputy of the ruler. Nam, the name, or also the name of God, the transcendent and immanent God, the whole creation, the Guru's Shabad Gurbani, also referred to Nam. Nam, Dan, Ishnan. These three terms embody the essential ideas of Guru Nanak for the Sikh way of life. Nam, Dan, Ishnan. Worship through the name also can be a contribution from rightful earnings toward the welfare of others, physical and moral purity. Nam Dharam, the path of the name as laid down by Guru Nanak. Nam Japna, to repeat the name of God. Nam Marg, the path of the name as distinct from others. Nam Simran, remembrance of God's name, meditation on the name. Namaz, one of the 5 daily prayers in Islam. Nami, the 9th day of the lunar month, regarded sacred by Brahmins. Now Nidh, the 9 treasures symbolic of the best possible gifts. Nich Jat, a person who belongs to the lowest caste in the Varna order, generally used for an outcast. Nijhal Raj, stable rule, the divine order, also a metaphor for the dispensation of Guru Nanak. Nindak, a backbeater, a slanderer, one who talks ill of the Guru. Niranjan, without impurity, Niranjan is also referred as God. Nirankari, one who believes in the formless God and worships him alone, a Sikh. Nirbhav, without fear, also called as fearless, or one who has no fear of death, is also an attribute of God who is eternal. Nirgun, without qualities, without attributes, the primal state of God before creation. Nirmal, absolutely pure, with no trace of impurity. Nirver, without enmity, an attribute of God, also a trait of the Guru. Oankar, the only eternal God. Padha, a Brahman teacher. Bad Nirban, the state of release or liberation. Pahar, 1/8 of a day equal to 3 hours. Pagambar, the messenger of God or the prophet in the Islamic tradition, the line ending with the Prophet Muhammad. Pakavaj, a musical instrument, like a drum. Palit, from Palid, a person who incurs a sin and thereby becomes impure. What we mentioned earlier about the trace of impurity, or you're becoming pure, but there are traces, and then you are absolutely pure, and there is nothing in your memory, there is nothing in your mind. You cleaned everything outside, inside, and also in your mind. When I say inside and outside, I mean the soul, in the sense of all the divinities accumulated into your discipline. We all have a personal discipline of personal development. Some people say, I like to write movies, I like to write music, I like to play a sport, I like to do certain personal rituals that contribute to what I am as a human being, that allow me to see as if it was a mirror inward and evaluate it and enjoy it and think of it. And all these disciplines accumulate certain essence and give shape to what your soul is, and is independent of the mind. I'm not gonna go into why the soul exists. I already said that. I'm not gonna go into why the mind exists. I already said that. But just to let you know that there are other people in the world I have heard who say the soul does not exist, who say the mind does not exist, and I sometimes question myself how difficult must be their life without a soul or without a mind. I'm sure living without God, living without soul, living without mind might be possible, but it is not easy. Pancha, a member of the committee of 5 Panchayat, representing a larger group of people, a member of the village Panchayat, which exercises authority on behalf of the village community. Pandit, a learned Brahman. Pandit Jyotki, a Brahman astrologer. Pardes, a strange country, this world where one lives for a short while. Pardesi, a stranger, an outsider, a person who knows that his real country is the next world, and therefore remembers all the time that he has to leave this world. Parampad, the prime state, the state of liberation. Parnali, a tradition of exegesis created by a line of expounders. Parupkar, something done for others. Parupkari, one who does something for others, an epithet for God, also used for the Guru and his Sikh. Parajat, a mythical tree that is believed to fulfill all the wishes of its possessor. Padshahi, from Badshahi, rulership, a metaphor for the tenure of the Guru in the early Sikh tradition. Padri, the book used by the Brahman astrologer to determine auspicious or inauspicious time for a particular purpose. Patal, a tree leaf used as a plate. Pauri, a stanza. Pind, a ball of rice for feeding Brahmins as part of mortuary rites. Pir, the guide for the Sufi path in Kankaj. A Shaikh who is no longer alive, but his tomb has become a place of pilgrimage for the people who believe in his power to confer blessings. Potdari, it is taken also from Fotadari, the position or office of the treasurer. Prasad, again, this definition of grace, also sacred food. Puja, worship, can also be a ritual worship of an idol. Pun, a virtuous act in the Brahmanical tradition. Pura Guru, the perfect Guru, God as the Guru, Guru Nanak. Puruk, a person used for God to clarify that God in the Sikh tradition is not an impersonal reality as in the Vedanta. Kwatsi, or Katsi, the person who pronounces judgment on the basis of the provisions of the Shariat as expounded by a Mufti, an important official in the administration of justice under Turco-Afghan and Mughal rule. Kudrat is power shown by God in his creation, the divine power behind all that happens, an expression of God's power. Rahim, one who shows mercy, God. Rahit, the actual conduct of life regarded by Guru Nanak and his successors as far more important than verbal professions of faith. And this hits very interesting with what we were saying before about the book of the astrologer, because there are certain texts that relate and explain what the origin of the Egyptian tarot was, and it always comes to a dead end, because it says that it used certain magic. It says that it used the early approaches to algebra done by the Egyptians, and this description of the 870 professions, and these professions were regarded as these cards with these illustrations that pay some tax to you as you read them, and then you interpret the message, and here the verbal profession of faith and the conduct of life and how it is reflected and how the astrologer sees it, and Rahit, the actual conduct of life, and the fact that it was regarded by Guru Nanak and his successors as far more important than anything in the case of verbal professions of faith, calls my attention for a second. Raijat, the subject people in a monarchical rule, the common people. Raj, rule, rulership, metaphor for the temporal concerns of the gurus as an essential part of their idea of regeneration. Raja, a ruler. Rajan, rulers, the elite. Raj Yog, a position or a system in which temporal and spiritual concerns are seen as two sides of the same ideology. Ramjan, the devotees of God, God's people. Ram Nam, the name of God. Ra-Na, a petty chief reduced to the position of an intermediary between the ruler of the state and his subjects in a given territory. The descendant of a Rana. Rao, a chief reduced to the status of a subordinate by a superior ruler. A descendant of a Rao. Ras can be juice and also can be pleasure. I'm not sure if indulgence came here somehow. I'm not sure. Rasajan, the alchemical substance believed to turn a base metal into gold. A metaphor for the agency of transformation, like Nam. Rasa, wish and also God's will. Rup, form, a beautiful form, the beauty of a woman. Shabad Maro Pirjivo Sadhi, die in the Shabbat and live forever. Sachih, truth, the truth of God, who alone is true in the sense of being eternal. Sachih Kand, the state in which truth is realized and one can see the divine ordinance hukam operative everywhere in the physical and the moral world. Sachih Sahib, the true master, God. Sacho Takht, the true throne, the divine court. Sachihi Sangat, the true association, the Sikh congregation for worship. Sada Hadura, it calls from Husur, ever present, God. Sada Suhagan, the woman whose spouse is always alive and she never becomes a widow, used for the person who has turned to God through the Guru. Sade, call, a composition on the theme, the Kyle of Death. Sadhe, a pious person, a devotee of God, the Guru, the Sikh of the Guru. Sadhik, a person who practices austerities. Sadhu, or Sadh, used for the Guru and the Sikh. Sadhu Jan, the Guru, the Sikhs. Sadik, one who is absolutely sincere and steadfast. Sahaja, a state in which there is no hurry and no tension, the state of liberation as a state of bliss. Sahaja Jog, the path through which Sahaja is pursued and attained, the path of Guru Nanak and his successors. Saho, a Sahokar who advances or lends money to traders who remain accountable to him, also a metaphor for God. Sambhu, self-existence, God. Salar, the leader, the commander of an army. Salik, a traveler on the Sufi path. Sandhya, evening worship. Sang, impersonation but also a character in a theatrical performance. Sangat, association of persons, used for the Sikh congregation. Sanjam, restraint and moderation. Sant, a pious person, a devotee of God, the Guru, also the Sikh. Sant Jan is referred to also as the Sikhs. Sant Sabha, the congregation of the Guru and his Sikhs. Sanjasi, a Shaiva renunciant who practices austerities. There were different orders of the Shaiva Sanjasis. Saramkand, the state in which one works for the welfare of others. Sargun, like with attributes. God, generally but misleadingly used for Vaishnava Bhakti, in which Vishnu's human incarnations are the objects of worship. And so take it with a grain of salt, because sometimes when it becomes too subjective, you can say, well, it is not a definition, it is a description of the world. If an enlightened person comes and says, I perceive the world this way, I perceive the creation this way, I perceive that there is a truth inside all of this the following way, he never says, I am the owner of the creation and whatever that surrounds me. It's a description, the way he perceives it. And some people might say, oh, this is an enlightened person. This is a message that we want to follow, that we need in our lives, or however develops the situation with that enlightened person. But keep in mind that if it sounds so rigid or closed-minded, it's exactly the opposite, and it is a description. It might be as subjective as you can take it further. So yeah, for Vishnu's human incarnations as objects of worship, it is a source of inspiration. Why not? As long as it doesn't put 5,000 years of evolution and history and construction of all the world that we perceive the way we perceive it in this language, in this formalism, I think is a source of inspiration, that inspiration is possible. For poetry, there are tons of situations like that in which you don't need to put everything to damage you and everything to put yourself, your mind, your heart in danger. That's what I'm trying to say. Sarraf, a jeweler who knows the difference between the true and the false coin, and also God, because you cannot trick the magician. He knows the trick and the two fallbacks. Sadguru, the true guru, used for God and for Guru Nanak and his successors. Sadguru Bachan, the word or order of the true guru. Sat Nam, the true name, God in the transcendent state, for whom the only epithet that can be used is true, Sachihe, or Sat. Sat Sangat, the true association, the Sikh congregation. Sat Sachihe, the truth. Savaya, a poem written in praise, a kind of eulogy. Sev, or also Seva, service, servant, service of God, service of the Guru, service of the Sikhs, service of others. Sevak, one who serves, a devotee of God, a follower of the Guru. Shabad is the word, divine self-revelation through creation, a composition of the Guru. Shabad Mare, if one dies in the Shabad, one lives forever. Shahid. Shahid is a martyr in the Muslim tradition as an object of veneration, with his tomb as a place of pilgrimage. Shaikh, the guide on the Sufi path, also called Pir, and generally having a kankak, where his disciples learn and pursue the path as a regular discipline. And this has a very interesting part here, because if you remember, Sufi Masi is like the situation in which the meditation, for example, with Kundalini Yoga, there is an instant of time in which the meditation and the physical evolution of the entire set of exercises comes to a point in which it downloads the energy down to your body. And in that situation, you might feel joy, or you might feel that you are invaded by the energy. And the transubstantiation of physical energy into matter. And that matter goes to your mind, and that matter goes to your spirit, and you build yourself. And Sufi Masi, for this particular case of the Shahik, Sufi path. It says the guide on the Sufi path, and Sufi stands in the Middle East tradition of musical instruments. Sufi Masi is like a kind of phraseology that you use to evolve the musical discourse. Like, I don't know if you have heard it, but one example could be my album that is called Pathway to the Moon, in which the tracks are super long. They almost take 20 minutes to finish the entire track. But inside that track, there's tons of things happening, and a little too subjective, but to make it a little shorter, sometimes the instruments are conversating with other instruments, and in that melodic development, when you have two phrases for 7 bars and then 5 bars and then another 7 bars phrase and that 5 bar in the center, it permeates this conversation between the instruments. There are specific poetic and phraseological sort of templates, if you will, sort of traditional phrases that always go in the percussion instruments, and they're called Sufi Masi. And let's say, for the sake of its simplicity and for the sake of its beauty, it is the path of enlightenment. Sufi Masi is its result, and Sufi is the path. It's really beautiful. And that's why it's very interesting to be regarded as the path to a regular discipline that goes inward. And the key word here is discipline with yourself. Sometimes we say, I have to study physics to be disciplined at university because I want to contribute to the, I don't know, ecological consumption of energy in my country. And I have to be strictly disciplined. But remember that if you are more disciplined to your own shaikh, doing Japji Sahib in the morning, doing Kundalini Yoga, doing meditation, eating in the rasa style of eating, if you keep the correct balance of flavors in your mind, then you will never go crazy. Remember that food addiction is a reality, and biting these tastes, like the flavors, the artificial flavors, are my favorite subject lately, because they are like soap, delicious soaps. You see that when you go to these countries, these post-industrial countries, they use this certain gel. It's a chemical gel with chemically induced smell, and it smells like soap, a chemical soap, and they use this gel to wash their hair. And there is a very funny joke that says, Pantene Pro V, and I lost my hair, right? Because this shampoo and all these things are super chemical that will take off every hair out of your head. And yeah, with these flavors and these artificial flavors comes this question: why are they so chemicalistically tasty? What is the definition of tasty there? And I still believe there is a lack of an argumentative or a fundamentally conceptually giant lack of definition in the West world regarding what the word tasty means. Because I always take these candies and smell them, and I feel like smelling soap or smelling shampoo. And it is like, what, I'm gonna place this in my mouth, and it tastes like soap. And then I remember rasa is the correct balance. Is the correct balance of flavor in the mind, not in the stomach, not in the tongue. And if you keep this correct balance of flavors, acid, sweet, a little bitter, and all the rasa theory in the Ayurveda kitchen and Ayurveda medicine. And you always, when you're eating, you do the exercise of sending the energy of the food to your mind, to your head, not to your stomach. Then you know when enough is enough. Then you know when tasty is tasty or tasty is chemical. Then you know that the food that you're eating doesn't have the secondary purpose of making you addict to it by giving you a smell or a taste that sounds extremely perfectly tasty, suspiciously delicious, but if you think about it twice, it is not. It is shampoo. Okay. Shallock is generally a couplet, but can be much longer. Shanti, peace, as a characteristic of the state of liberation. Tal, it is rhythm in music. Tanka, used for salary or tankah in Mughal usage, but in the Sikh tradition for penance prescribed for a default in the light of the Sikh Rahit. Tap, practice of austerities. Tapsi, one who practices tap or austerities. Tariqat, the Sufi path as distinguished from the Shariat, though not necessarily opposed to it. Tarapan, offerings as a part of ritual. 10 directions, Dehdisa, east, west, north, south, northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest, sky, also underworld. 3 gunas, 3 qualities or characteristics known as Rajo, Tamo, and Sato, which determine temperament, collectively called Trikuti, and this enchains a little with what I was saying before about rasa, the correct balance of flavor. Rajasic food, tamasic food, and sattvic food, so to speak, because there is no complicated way to get lost. Certain food will give you energy and strength. Certain food will give you energy and power to meditate. Energy and strength. Some food will give you energy and strength to physical power, to close business deals, to have a long conversation. The PowerPoint behind you and you expressing a message. And some food will give you enough energy and power to meditate, but some food will put you into lazy mode 3 days without eliminating the entire thing. Something that putrefying inside you. Yes, meat causes cancer. It's dangerous, and the overdose of protein that you eat when you consume meat is really high. It's so overloaded with protein that it can damage your system. It can give you cancer. And if you go to other countries and you say meat gives you cancer, they will think about astrology. But remember, there is a disease in the Western world called cancer because they eat meat which is overloaded with protein. Tirat, a sacred place, a place of pilgrimage. 3 worlds, 3 lok, the heaven, the earth, and the nether regions, the entire universe. Trikuti, a combination of the 3 qualities, gunas, which remain an obstacle in the path of liberation, all being material and not spiritual. Turyavashta, a term of yoga used in Gurbani for the state of liberation. Udas, detached, udasi, one who practices detachment. Ulama, plural of alim, a learned person, a person adept in Islamic learning. Umara, plural of amir, a member of the ruling class. Updes, instruction, teaching, homily. Uttam Jat, the highest caste in the Varna order. Uttam Pant, the superior path. Vaid, a physician. Vak is an utterance, the words spoken by the Guru. Vak Lainam is to open the Guru Granth Sahib at random for the order, between quotes, of the Guru in any given situation or for the day. I tend to say order, between quotes, because it is fate. It is destiny. It never stops. It's like the one of the Egyptian tarot cards is called the Wheel of Fortune. It states that, and it's beautiful because it is a circle related to a wheel that never stops, and it depends on how you look at it, because it depends on how the person looks at you and asks the question. And regarding to the question, if that card appears, you have two options. One is that in the right hand side of the illustration there is a very thin person, and in the other side of the illustration there is a very fat demon. And regardless of how your life is going on, fortune only increases. You only have to be aware on which way the wheel is being headed, because it never stops. That's what I mean by fate. It's not necessarily that the order is limited by the amount of pages. It doesn't work that way. And it's important to respect it in the sense of abundance, in the sense of richness, in the sense of the wealth of the ancient, rather than any other description that the word order here seems too simplistic. Of course it is, because it is in English, and this is an approach to translate it. It never happens to be it never happens to be translated correctly. I do my best effort, but I know sometimes it feels rigid as in English. It is a very rigid way of speaking. Vanjaram, a trader who works for Shahukar or borrows money from him for trade. Vapari, a trader. Varna is literally color, used for each of the fourfold hierarchical social order of the Brahmanical tradition, generally referred to as caste. Vish Asaho Nirasi, one who has no ambition for oneself, but has a firm conviction that everything will be set right by God. Vichai Greh Udas, detached within the home. Vaja, a musical instrument. And just to finish, Vatsifa, a religious duty, uttering God's praises. And as such, this small interlude of the glossary is finished. I hope this contribute to the next episodes and the next sessions, in which we can continue our study of Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much. God bless you.